how would you have handled the Grizzlies Dillon Brooks situation? Start us off, Steve.
I would say there's a lot of controversy here, but I probably would have handled it the same exact way, right? Like, there clearly was a culture problem. And when you got a culture problem, sometimes you got to make an example, right? And what better way to make an example than a guy who, underperformed when they needed him the most? So they want to move away the trash talking, the image. You got to make an example of somebody. And the way they made the example is like, hey, you are not welcome back in our company. We're going to have a public flogging here. So I probably would have handled it the same exact way. I wouldn't have handled it any different. So I think they did it properly.
All right. Way to just agree with the question. We appreciate it. All right. CJ, what about you?
All right, look, like they had to get rid of this guy. I looked up his stats just now. He had decent season stats, but you know what I've never seen? I've been all over the U.S. I've never seen anybody walking around in a Dillon Brooks jersey. All right, why is he the most talked about person on the Memphis Grizzlies team during their playoff run, their short-lived playoff run? He had to be dealt with. He had to be off the team. They had a major cultural issue with having such a young nucleus of players. Ja Morant, his whole situation. They had to get rid of this guy because he was just kind of contributing to that negative perspective that had been created. So I think it was the right move 100%.
All right. What are your thoughts, RJ? What would you have done?
Yeah, I think this is an interesting topic because it's more or less they're just making a decision to not re-sign him because he's coming up on his free agency. And it's a team that underperformed in the postseason, right? Losing to the Lakers in kind of embarrassing fashion. I think the only thing that I probably would have changed is if they really want to make a change in their culture, could they trade Ja Morant as well? Because he was the one that started all of the drama late in the season with his whole Instagram live gun situation. I think if they're really trying to make a statement to how they're going to run the organization, they would move on from Ja Morant as well.
Okay, all right. I like that you added a little bit into the conversation there, RJ. That's nice. All right, Eric, what about you?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, it appears that they made the right decision. I think this is a good business lesson for anybody that runs a business, is on a team, in the office or out of the office. And I learned this a few years ago from a friend. It comes from the Navy SEALs, and they rate people in two categories: trust and performance. And what they effectively said is, this started not in the postseason. This guy's been doing this really his whole career, but it started at the beginning of the year. They tolerated it as long as they were winning. And it wasn't until the performance suffered that they now are the champion of being a good teammate and a player. I think it's BS. I think it's too little, too late. They effectively aren't bringing him back. So it's not like they suspended him or took a stance on his behavior. They're just not bringing him back. If you think about like back in the 90s, the Detroit Pistons, that entire team embraced that mentality, right? It was the culture of Detroit. It was the culture of that team. Unless they want that to be how they're known and be that sort of outward-facing representation of their brand, they have to cut ties and get far away. But if you're paying attention, they permitted it for 80, 90 games and didn't have a problem with it as long as they got wins. To me, that's kind of a crappy stance to take, and I've lost a little respect for that organization.